Thank you. Revolutionary greetings. Good afternoon. I greet one and all with the universal greeting of peace. This is a joint effort with the Peace in Kurdistan Social Ecology Network and representatives of the South African grassroots community structures in South Africa. The theme of this webinar is the South Africa and the resistance struggle of grassroots communities. I'm Mahmoud Patel, the moderator, chairperson of the Kurdish Human Rights Action Group in South Africa, and my co-moderator is Dr. Kasker. We will do a short context of the political and legal situation in South Africa, and thereafter our keynote speakers, the chairperson of the Abahlali Basonjolo movement, or the Shack Dwellers movement, Zikode, will then present. Thereafter, Zainulabideen Gaddafi and Nonhle Mbuthuma. I must mention that due to the incessant load shedding, it's become quite challenging to have all our speakers on. And as they do link with us, we will then continue so that we hope to have time without power shortages to continue with our discussions. Comrade Zikode is the founding president of the Abahlali Basonjolo movement in South Africa. He has strongly campaigned for the right to housing under the theme that housing is a human right. What is most important for us is the Abahlali Basonjolo movement took on the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal over a decade ago and went right up to the apex court in this country, the Constitutional Court, which found in its favor against the provincial government led by the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. South Africa is at a precipice where we find ourselves at a disjuncture. The co-opting of neoliberalism and capital, including the multinationals, has foregrounded the dire inequality that has increased in South Africa. Were it not for the movements such as Abahlali Basonjolo, the movements led by Ms. Nonhle Mbuthuma, including those such as Comrade Zainulabideen with the Zakzaky Foundation and other community-based grassroots structures, we take our resolve and strength in their democratic struggles to make democracy work, because there is a disjuncture between the Constitution and what it intends for the post-democratic state. The world is watching. South Africa is a hope for those that are fighting against colonialism, deconstructing from the colonial structures, as well as state violence against its own peoples in different parts of the globe, not only in Africa, but the rest of the world. We take leave from Comrade Abdullah Öcalan, who currently is on the island of Imrali, and he is quoted as saying, "When we stop producing for profit, we will have achieved the liberation of the world. This in turn will be the liberation of humanity and of life itself." So without further ado, I would like Comrade Zikode to continue with his presentation. Comrade Zikode, as we say in South Africa, the floor is yours, comrade.
Thank you so much, Comrade Patel. I just want to greet everyone that is participating here and express my sincere gratitude to Craig and all the organizers of this webinar. Again, my name is Zikode. I am the president of the Shack Dwellers movement of South Africa, Abahlali Basemjondolo. The movement was formed in 2005 to fight for, protect, promote, and advance the interest and the dignity of the Shack Dwellers and the impoverished in South Africa. We are 17 years old now, and Abahlali stands for the society that wants to build an equal and a just society based on respect and dignity. This is the vision for Abahlali. We want to see every human being being treated with respect and dignity. Our mission is to improve the living conditions of the Shack Dwellers and the impoverished in South Africa and the world as a whole. So building a movement has not been easy. I am going to take you through the work of Abahlali, which is really difficult. We struggle under very serious conditions. Some of you who may not be aware of the living conditions under which impoverished South Africans have to go through. Those who are living in shanty towns, those who are living in slums, those who are living in difficult conditions, there is hardly any access to water and sanitation. There is hardly no road access, no refuse collection, no electricity. As a result, people use candles as a source of light. They use paraffin stoves to cook, and these stoves often explode. So if one shack or one family is on fire, suddenly the entire settlement, the entire village, the entire community is on fire. So we've lost a number of community members, including women and children in the shanty town. So life is not easy. I think that's very important for participants here to understand that this is not an easy day-to-day life in which impoverished people are subjected to. So in order for Abahlali to grow, and I must say that our focus is really on land rights, particular urban land. That is our area of focus, but we also focus on decent housing, that everyone ought to have a place called home. Home is very close to our hearts because home provides dignity. And the third focus, it's not just land and decent housing, but it's also the question of dignity, that every human being is born with so much dignity and therefore ought to be treated with respect and dignity. And often impoverished communities are not treated with dignity. So it is our job as this social movement to really make sure that every community, every family, every individual is given the high respect that the human being deserves. So our work as Abahlali baseMjondolo is really to organize the impoverished communities. We want to build the power of the impoverished from below. We believe in a democracy from below. We believe in community governance, that the people themselves, as the famous Freedom Charter in South Africa dictate, that people shall govern. And that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to be involved, participate in the governance of our country, of our communities. All we need is to be supported. So our efforts is really to humanize the world. We want to build a world that is welcoming, a world that treats every human being with so much dignity. We believe in a world that really assists every human being in terms of human development. But in doing so, obviously, one has to organize. And for that world to be realized, one needed to organize their communities. But before we become better communities, we have to build strong family values. Abahlali is about family. So our teachings, our popular education systems and praxis really reflect the kind of a society we want to build. It starts with family. For us, families are very important. For us to have better communities, we must have better families. So we try to mend our broken families because many of us come from broken families. For us, in order to build better communities, we have to have a strong family foundations with strong family values. And for us to talk about the country and the world, there has to be better family values, there has to be better, improved community values. And we believe that communities are built also. We are not communities simply because we us.
Okay,
so it's important, therefore, that we build these family values very strong so that we have a better organization. So we have spent a lot of time as Abahlali to educate ourselves, to define ourselves, to say, this is who we are, this is where we are, this is what we want. In order for us, and before we can actually talk about the demands and the material needs that we are subjected to, it is important that we are human beings. We are more human. That is why, as Abahlali baseMjondolo, we were able to intervene and assist in campaigning against xenophobia, against any form of violence, especially violence against migrant communities in a form of xenophobia, violence against women and children, as we are part of the 16 days of activism against the abuse of women and children as we speak. We have had to organize to fight against discrimination of against the LGBTIQ plus communities and those who find themselves really in the margin of our communities. For us, we think that makes us a better community. And with that, we have created our own philosophy, which is called ubuhlalism. This bright spirit of belonging. It is the same idea of Ubuntu, we are because you are, meaning there is no human being that can be defined in isolation to others. Our humanity and our persons are not complete in isolation to others. For us, that is very important. So it's been really important for us to really spend more time on that. And this is what we do every day. We interact with communities before we can actually talk about the troubles and the challenges that are facing this country, which includes high rate of unemployment, which includes the lack of jobs, which includes poverty and inequalities. But before we get to that serious business, it is important that we spend more time to be more humane, which is why I was struck by Comrade Patel when you were greeting, using the word peace as your form of greeting, because this is what we pray for. This is what we strive for. We know that the language of peace cannot be discussed only in the presence of war. Also in the absence of war, we are not at peace internally within our families, within our communities, and of course, within the political landscape of our countries. So we are not at peace. So for us, it's really important. So we call that discussion that caters, that acknowledges every human life, the teaching of human values as ubuhlalism. That is our philosophy. This is an idea that resonates with our day-to-day thinking of the communities that we serve. So the movement does a lot of organizing, because we've been very clear that we don't need to be in government in order to effect change. Change is possible even outside the government. But what is more important, even in government, is really to build these communities from outside, so that we don't just entrust individuals with our lives in offices. We do not want to put individuals in the offices of government, but rather put the people, so that those who are tempted with corruption and whatsoever are always guided, because the people themselves are the custodians and the vanguard of our revolution. So it is important that we do. So we do a lot of community visit, because we think it's really important that we build communities with these strong values. When we visit communities, we do a lot of presentation about political and civic and economic rights of the people, the shack dwellers in particular, but also about the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the international, because we subscribe to internationalism ideas as well. I just came from the celebration of the award that was awarded to a Kenana commune by the Southern Human Rights Defenders, and how the event started was with the Internationale, followed by the national anthem, because we think that is important. There can only be peace when we really acknowledge one another's humanity. So we have a number of activities that we do, including this community visit, where we do our political education, where we launch branches, where we do a lot of political events, in fact, that build capacity of the communities, so that they are equipped in terms of engaging with government, because we want to bring government to the people and bring people to government. We are not fighting government, so people must be clear. And in doing that, we do that with great humility, but we are very firm with what we are trying to accomplish. So Amahlali uses 3 strategies as part of organizing. One strategy is called the people's strategy, the people's power. It is called the political strategy, where we rely and believe in the diversity, in the unity of the organized masses of the working class and the poor working together with the belief that the only weapon that the impoverished communities and the working class have is the unity, is the solidarity. The power that they possess when they speak in one voice can do wonders for our communities. So it's important then that we focus on really building solidarity between and within struggling communities as our political strategy. The second strategy, obviously, is the media strategy, where we use media, social media as an alternative media from the mainstream media that doesn't cover us, that really rather generate propaganda that rubbishes the work that we do. That is why many people get confused who we are, which is why we appreciate all these opportunities when we are presented to present ourselves, so that people can know the deeper humanity that we have. It's not what the media tells you, it's who we are. We are not doing what we do to impress others. We do because we think we have a moral obligation. Duty to God, duty to my country, that we build and we humanize this world a little better. And we believe another world is possible. That strategy that we use, of course, is the legal strategy. We use courts. We use the law, not only as a sword, but as a shield. Not only as a shield when we defend ourselves from evictions and from all the things that takes us back, but we use the law as a sword as well to advance the rights that are enshrined not only in South Africa's constitution, but also in the international laws. It is important for us to really use courts. And of course, we do this through partners. We have the Socio-Economic Rights Institute that works with us. There are other law clinics such as your Legal Resource Center, the CAS Center for Applied Legal Studies in Johannesburg. So these organizations and entities play a vital role in advancing the struggle of the impoverished communities. And we think it's really important for us to strengthen, to identify allies and keep expanding. So the movement now is sitting and has exceeded actually 100,000 membership over the past few years. However, having worked so hard to build these organizations, to build this power of the impoverished from below, which we are very proud of, which we are honored, but the movement is also at the same time facing serious repression. We have lost 24 activists to assassination. Within the space of 5 months in this year alone, we've lost 4 activists who were shot, some of them in a broad daylight, during when the women and children were watching. So the price for decent housing, price for land, has been paid in blood in South Africa. We call upon all progressive formations, democratic formations. We call upon the Kurdish movements and the people who are really struggling for peace in your respective country. We want to say that we want and we wish to stand in solidarity with your cause as well. We know your cause requires us to stand firm with you, but we also invite you to stand firm with us as we confront the monster that divides us, that enriches itself at the expense of the millions of people in South Africa and across the world. We want to say, and I just want to conclude, comrades, by saying, we have a school called Frantz Fanon in one of our communes in Kenana, where comrades educate themselves, but where the visionaries of scholars like Frantz Fanon has laid a foundation for us. I want to end with a quote from Frantz Fanon, the French philosopher, who said 60 years ago, he says, each generation has to discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill
Comrades, fellow revolutionaries, guests, honored and distinguished speakers, I would just like to apologize. As you are aware, and as I announced earlier, South Africa, in parts of its regions, is going through load shedding. And Comrade Zikode did inform us that he is also in an area where there is load shedding and he could go off any moment. So I suppose that load shedding has finally kicked in on his end and he unfortunately may not be able to continue. But he was at the stage of concluding and we got the bulk and the essence of what he presented. His focus was foregrounded with a brief synopsis of the history of the Abahlali Abawatsonjolo movement in South Africa. He focused on the three strategic points: the people strategy, the media strategy, as well as law as a weapon and a tool, a shield, as he said, and a spear to use in their multi-pronged approach to realize their democratic values and ideals, fighting a state that is inimical to the majority of the poor in South Africa. I don't want to take more time on Comrade Zbu's presentation, which is not only robust, but it also gave a call for solidarity against all progressive movements, including those in the struggle for the freedoms of the Kurdish people and others who find themselves in a similar context. Our next presenter is no stranger to the realities and struggles on the ground. Comrade Nonhle Mbuthuma is the current spokesperson of the Amadiba Crisis Committee. She took part in forming that structure and the community court in Komkulu, the great place in Kolabeni, in Wild Coast region of South Africa in August 2007. What is interesting for us to understand that her roots are from the Amapondo tribe, which established in the beginnings of the 1800s by Faku after he opposed the regime in Zululand of King Shaka. The former colonial colonel in King Shaka's council went south to establish his own territory. Nonhle got an introduction into the politics of land rights by the elders in the community and a grandfather who participated in the Pondo Rebellion that brewed since 1950 and broke out in the open war from 1959 to 1961. The Amapondos fought against the apartheid state and its betterment schemes in defense of the land. The rebellion ended with a massacre and hanging of 30 leaders in Pretoria, the capital of apartheid South Africa, but it forced the apartheid government to give up its land grab plans in that region. The defense of the land is an important part of that people's identity and a living history of the area where Nonhle grew up. Indeed, the elders say that the rebellion started in Amadiba. Without further ado, I would like to ask Comrade Nonhle to please present to us. And as we say, the floor is yours, Comrade Nonhle. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Comrade. I just want to apologize to join late. I was struggling a little bit of joining, and also what I'm going to do, I won't put my camera because I can see that the load shedding is affected also where I am. I will try to speak without having a camera if I'm allowed to do so.
Kindly go ahead, Comrade Nonhle. We understand. Thank you, Ma.
Okay, thank you. Amadiba Crisis Committee, it's like a baby. It was like it's not an old movement, but as the comrade was presented, it's a baby of being born of the land issue of 1940s. Because when we look at the situation right now, there is no different than the 1940s where our forefathers, they were defending the land against the British colony, where our land, our communities, our ancestors were being moved out of the land. Right now, the issue is that after 1994, we were just hoping that we are in a democratic state. But just 2 years after democracy, the company just come and discovered the titanium in our community. It was the beginning of a fight, because the reason why it was the beginning of a fight, we told the mining companies that we are not interested in the mining development, but we are interested on sustaining ourselves, because we're living here in Pondoland for centuries and we sustain ourselves. And we do have ecotourism, which is sustaining our community. When you talk about Amampondo, Amampondo is one of the very peaceful community as well. But since we've been attacked because of there's quite a lot of interest in our land where we're living, because this targeting of the Eastern Pondoland, because when we're talking about Pondoland, Pondoland is 100 kilometers coastal, but we are on the eastern, which is on the coast, which is the more that even during the apartheid was also being targeted. And we're very disappointed that the same democratic state that is thinking is ours, they are still targeting the same Eastern Pondoland, where right now they discovered they want to open an open cast mining. They just also want to do explore oil and gas in our coastal, in our ocean, where it's part of our livelihood. And also they just want to build so-called smart city in the middle of the villages. They also want to build the highway through our villagers. The villagers, as I'm saying, we've born and live here, we've grown up here, we never go anywhere else. We have livestock, we have all our life is here. Now, if you are coming to disturb our social fabric, our way of living here, you're disturbing us. That is why we stand up. We said that during the Pondo revolt, we were just thinking that fight is over. But now I can see that it started again from the second generation, which is us. We are fighting to the same fight of defending the land, defending our ancestral land with all the cost that we have. When we do so, it's not an easy task, because as comrades Wu mentioned, because that time during the Pondo revolt, our grandfathers, there was no option for them. But for us, at least, we have the court of law, which is our strategy, where we did take our own government, where we said that we have a right to choose and we have a right to say no to anything, because it's not always that it's the government to decide what is good for us. And that judgment, it was handed down in 2018, where it was stated clear that the community of Xolobeni, or the community of Amadiba, before any mining right, must give a full, free, prior informed consent. And you cannot believe that our own government just says that no, they're going to appeal that decision because it's going to cause a chaos in South Africa. It means that there will be no mining. But the question, are we not having part of, are we not part of South Africa? Why we cannot choose what type of development that we want? It's always that it's a top-down approach. Now, there's many cases, and since then, they haven't put heads of argument in court if what are they appealing, but it's just only the notices of appeal. Now, the second thing, while we're still waiting for that, we just see that they are pushing to build a highway through our village, because we know that if the highway is a key of all these mega projects that they want to push our community out of the community. That is why they just want to make sure that they push the N2 first, to make sure that because you cannot mine in our community without a proper route. That is why the road is so important for them. But they keep saying that the road they are building for the community. our community, it needs to be accessible. It needs to be our villagers, but not with the highway. Highway is going to also remove our communities from the agriculture, is also going to bring all sorts of criminalities that we don't have right now. We hear that people are talking about the gender-based violence, but not in our society, because everybody is busy, everybody's active. Now, if you're taking away those kind of that kind of life, that means you are pushing the society, you are building a monster society. That is why, as a Madiba Crisis Committee, we stand to say that no to impose development. Communities must choose their own development. But it's unfortunately, wherever what we're saying, it's meaningless to our own state. Now, even the N2 toll road, we are not even saying that they must not build. What we're saying, we said that must be pushed away from the coast, build in 10 kilometers. Instead, there is a hell of propagandas that they are pushing, that the Madiba Crisis Committee are anti-development, which is not true. We are for development, but they are not willing to listen what kind of development. Instead, they are just going out to say that this community is anti-development. It's very difficult to develop the community of Madiba. Now, recently, when it comes to the push, because there is, as I'm saying, there is a lot of unrest in our community right now. And today, there is not even a chance of seeing that there will be any justice for the murder of Bazuga. Those are the things that hurt us the most, people that were living in these communities. Now, recently, Shell, where they just want Shell to give the rights for explore the oil and gas in our ocean, where it's part of our secret, because ocean for us is not just only for livelihood, also is part of our sacred place, because our ancestors are residing in the ocean. Now, they were just decided because they think when they just mine in the ocean, we are not being affected. And that is why also, again, we take our own government together with Shell to court again. And that judgment was being handed down this year. And then we won that court case again. But you cannot believe the same government, together with these transnational corporations, they go together and go appeal that decision. And right now we are waiting for a judgment, because it was been held last week, their argument, because we try to want to see what is the government is arguing in terms of the rights to culture, the rights to choice, the freedom of choice, because we were never been consulted, because they just think if they just promote, because the problem is that it's a national economy versus local economy. National economy always overrides the human rights matter, because it doesn't matter what community says. That is the gist of the problem. That is why they just decided to go and appeal. It doesn't matter what community says. Now, we are waiting to see how they're going to argue in court, because at this stage, we still trust the court of law, that as we have the constitution, that constitution, it's always protect the citizens of South Africa. And it was not only that, but right now you can see how they push the propaganda of building the highway through our villages, because they keep saying that if we build the highway, it will also promote the ecotourism. But the ecotourism that we have here, it's not the big tourism. It's eco because of we have the best biodiversity that is rare, and we do the tourism that also it mitigates the climate change, because climate change is real. Now, while we're doing the eco-tourism, which is about culture, which is about history, which is about biodiversity that we have, but they want to distract that, to destroy completely, to change in a way that is going to benefit or is going to enrich the few. But at this stage, we respect the nature because we still practice culture. Those are the challenges that we are facing. But recently, the way the propaganda that they are pushing, as Amadiba, they said that we are anti-government. That's what they said. But we are not anti-government, because we're part of bringing this democratic government that we have. They were just even say that if it should be or it must be, they will defend the titanium Kolobeni mining, they will defend the oil and gas, they will defend the end to toll road with any cost. If there's somebody should be killed, the person must die. And it's clear for us that they are ready to prepare to sacrifice the citizens of South Africa just only for the few, just only to enrich the transnational corporations. Now the question, if we have the democratic state, if we have the leaders, who are they representing? If they can declare that such a statement in our communities that they are prepared to kill. They are for us as that we think that we have a right to choose. Where are those rights? Are those rights only for the transnational corporation? As communities, we have no right to choose. Those are the questions that we have. Now, if the Minister of Minerals and Energy as well, when we defended our livelihood, says that we are not different than the colonialists. Now, the question, who are they represented? Because you can, the law in South Africa is very clear. You cannot bring a development without consulting people. And when we're talking about consultation, we are talking about meaningful consultation, not just a tick in the box. And they were just thinking that because we are a rural community, we just desperate for anything. You know, we are not desperate. We do have land, we do have water, we have everything. We're sustaining ourselves. Right now in South Africa, we have a high rate of unemployment. Now, if you are taking out these communities that are managing to sustain themselves, that means you are pushing the country to reach the highest note of unemployment, because we cannot, all of us, to be burden of the state. We need to meet the state halfway. This is what we are doing right now, because we produce our own crops and we sell to the market. People are sustaining those. Some they are going to the fishing and then they fish. Now, if you're going to destroy that, you destroy the social fabric. And they never think of that, because the only thinking of our leaders is a short term, because we know that oil and gas is just a short term, titanium is just a short term, but the agriculture, the ecotourism that we are talking about, it's a long term. And it's very scary in our society when our government is going out and declaring those statements that they are prepared to kill or to prepare to die to defend the transnational corporation. It's really, really worries the entire community, because we know that they mean it. They are not lying what they said, because we've already lost a leader of ACC, or the chairperson of ACC, on these matters. Thank you. Let me stop right there.
Thank you so much, Comrade Nonhle, for your presentation. Your focus on using law very similar to the Abahlali Bosonjolo movement in a strategy to challenge the subversion of the state through its authority and to relegate you to the margins as being anti-progressive which is nihilistic to the needs of the community and its people. They are interested in the profits, like you've brought to our attention so closely. What is also important for us is the state will stop at nothing through whatever means in collaboration with the multinational corporations. Because in 2016, as you mentioned, the chair of ACC, Bazooka Radebe, was also assassinated by two hitmen. Comrades Zikode also brought to our attention the comrades that were recently assassinated. The important point I need to bring to everybody's attention, and it's a quotation from Comrade Abdullah Öcalan, where he says, and this is in honor of yourself, Comrade Nonhle, and all the other women and mothers and daughters that have stood firm against the collaboration of a state that is declaring war on its own people. Comrade Abdullah Öcalan has told us that a society can never be free without women's liberation. But more importantly, you have shown us that that is an exemplary conduct you and your fellow comrades are carrying on in that region and the communities. Do we have faith in the court and legal systems? My co-moderator unfortunately cannot join us because of the load shedding, and he would have zoomed in on the issue of Mazibuko and the Constitutional Court decision that ruled in favor of the municipal authorities in Gauteng and said it is within reasonableness for them to shut off water supplies. Now, there you have a direct contradiction in the Constitutional Court's jurisprudence that has been so progressive in the cases that you have been victorious in, Abahlali Bosonjolo, as well as the Irene Grootboom case that went to the highest court in the land. Those really gave effect constitutionally to the constitutional section on the right of environment in terms of Section 26. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who will take the floor, Comrade Zainulabideen Gaddafi, who is the coordinator of the Zakzaky Foundation. Their work is community development, resistance media. Comrade Zainulabideen is also the project coordinator of the Mawaddah Food Garden, very similar to the projects taking place in Rojava as we speak currently, and in some of the areas in Spain as well. Comrade Zainulabideen is the founder of the Kensington Food Drive, quite invested in community activism as well as safety issues, and combating drug activism is at the core of some of the work and projects they do. Comrade Zainulabideen, could you kindly take the floor and continue with your presentation?
Good afternoon, comrades, esteemed moderators, and of course the honorable comrades and fellow panelists, Comrade Nonhle and Comrade Sibu. It is an honor for us to sit here today and to present alongside such esteemed speakers and the panel that we have present today in this program, which is essential in bringing together different movements and grassroots organizations into fruitful and meaningful discussion. So thank you for coordinating this event and for inviting us and honoring us to join in this event. When it comes to grassroots organizations, I think that grassroots organizations is it's a fundamental part of bringing communities and ordinary people into the realm of struggle and the realm of development. Without grassroots organizations, we will have the various global events, national and international events taking place, which affects people on the very ground level without then the participation of ordinary citizens and people on the ground. And so I think that it's important for us to recognize the position of grassroots organizations and the work, also the effects of grassroots organizations on communities and the people at the very basic level. When it comes to certain challenges that's faced by grassroots organizations, and we will speak about ourselves and the organizations that we represent, in that I think a fundamental challenge that we face is the challenge of funding, the challenge of trust with regards to bigger corporations not trusting grassroots organizations, and of course the challenges that we have with the government and with the state in order for us to run our programs, and of course to get better results. If we look at the post-apartheid South Africa, we expected to see the different facets that affected people to be challenged. Those facets we can namely lodge in poverty, crime, gangsterism, and the issue of education. If we look at a study that was released in 2015 by Stats SA, we see that 49.2% of the adult population lives below the upper bound of poverty line. So in fact, we have approximately half of the population by the year 2015 that lives below the upper poverty line. And this is a concerning challenge because when we face issues of poverty, it means now that people are struggling to get a decent and quality education. You have the majority of South Africans struggling to get a decent healthcare. It means that the youth, communities, households are susceptible to all the different dangers that are associated with poverty, namely gangsterism and drugs. When we have issues of gangsterism and drugs, it affects people's safety and it affects people in terms of employment. And so we see that an issue like poverty, South Africa having 49.2% of the adults population living below the upper bound poverty line, it affects our communities from reaching sustainable development so we can see a better future for our youth and for our communities to be actively involved in the deeper struggle of facing, opposing, and bringing down the tentacles of imperialism, not only in South Africa, but joining in solidarity with the various causes of the world to challenge and to eradicate the scourge of imperialism. And so these are the challenges that we face in South Africa and that we face on grassroots organization levels and in our communities. The issue of poverty, the issue of gangsterism and drugs, where as a result of poverty, young people, our youth, they join gangs. They don't have safe spaces for our youth. Youth are not particularly engaged in education. When they wake up every morning, they have a school to go to, or they have a college or university to go to, where they can develop themselves with education and therefore uplift themselves economically. So you have the issue of poverty, which leads then to gangsterism and drugs. And as a result of gangsterism and drugs, you find that families are unable to develop. When there are drug abuse in a family, when the youth of the families are involved in gangsterism, it means that the challenge now to not only educate and to uplift a family becomes much more severe. Those that are on drugs, they are robbing people in the communities. They are stealing from the parents and they are stealing from their households. The rest of youth that are living in extreme and severe poverty, they join gangs. And gangsterism in South Africa is a very vast issue. We find that the state is under-resourced to deal with the scourge of gangsterism. In one particular area in Cape Town called Kensington, the area which I am based in, we have one police officer based at the police precinct for every 400 people living in the area. As a result of this, we see the inability and the ineffectiveness of the police to challenge gangsterism and to challenge gangs that operate as autonomous governments within the various areas. And I will expand on the examples. In an area where you have a gang, you have a prominent gang. This gang is the prominent gang. So they would be in control of the drug trade in that particular area, and they will control the illicit market of all other related activities, which is normally illegal trading, prostitution, drugs, etc. With the prominent gang in place, you then have the opposition gangs. So these are now gangs that come and they want to fight with the dominant gang in a particular area for dominance. This results in killings, in recruitment of youth. Which youth? The youth that are not in school, the youth that are not in university, and the youth that are struggling to meet their daily needs as a result of poverty. So you have opposing gangs recruiting the youth of particular areas. Once the recruitment drives are finished and the gangs are established, they use this very youth to become enforcers and to become hitmen. So you have fighting, you have gang killings, etc. And in the year 2016, in the one city in South Africa, in Cape Town, we saw that there were more than 2,500 gang-related murders where young people below the age of 28 were implicated, prosecuted, or imprisoned as a result of gangsterism and drugs. The disturbing issue here is that the vast majority, if not all of those 2,500 young people implicated in gangsterism and in murders all come from underprivileged homes and homes where there are no opportunities, no education, and nothing to take those people further for their development. And so we find that as a result of poverty in South Africa, you have the scourge of gangsterism and drugs, which is a contributing factor in keeping the cycle of poverty, in keeping our communities underdeveloped, and of course allowing for the forces of imperialism, the forces out there, the forces of evil to come forward and to abuse and to oppress and to steal minerals and resources and to see the kind of issues that we are seeing in the communities mentioned by Comrade Nonhle and Sibu. So what we are doing in our capacity is, number one, we try to assist with that very basic need. We try to arrange food packs, we try to arrange feeding schemes as well as grocery drives for communities and households where there is poverty. In this case, if there is a child that's going to school, the child doesn't go to school hungry, doesn't concentrate in school, comes back after school and experiments with drugs as well as joining gangs. But when we then go ahead and we assist these communities with food packs, with grocery packs, etc., it means that school children actually have a reason to go to school with a full belly. They can concentrate at school, and this assists in at least driving these youth to see that there is a better path for them to study hard in school so they can join university, become educated, and develop their families. So this is one way in which we are involved in addressing the issue of poverty. We don't necessarily have the resources, large sums of money, so that we can say, let's take 20, 30, 40, or 100 kids out of an impoverished community away from gangsterism, put them in private schools so they can get the best education. But what we can do is ensure that these kids are able to go to school with a full belly, able to take a packed lunch to school, eat their fill, and have the energy to go ahead to study and, of course, to do well at school, which hopefully allows them to enter university and to educate themselves. More than that, we are also involved in the Mawaddah Food Garden, which was an initiative which we took to grow our own produce. We have fruits, we have vegetables, we have herbs. We grow these and we take them to a particular community in Belgravia. There is a squatter camp called The Flay, where the people are living in extreme poverty. They're living in shanties or in shacks without water. There is no electricity. And I think the main commodity in that area is drugs. We have tik, we have niopi, we have all other kind of drugs, which the people use so they can forget about the troubles that they are facing. They can forget about the poverty. They can forget that they have children to feed, and they can just make it through the night with the high. So this particular community we have adopted, and with the produce that we grow in the Mawaddah Food Garden, we take to these families, we give them vegetables and fruits, and this helps them to get through the day, to be able to cook a meal, or to get through the week and to sustain themselves for the week. We also use the Mawaddah Food Garden to bring in other people, people that come from poorer backgrounds, that have access to land, where we teach them how to grow the basic produce that they can use to sustain themselves. So we teach them how to plant potatoes, how to plant the everyday vegetables that they would need, and we equip them with the tools. So we give them basic gardening tools as well as seeds. We teach them how to plant and how to garden, and then we allow them to go off into their own capacities where they can then go ahead, plant for themselves, and either use that to feed their families, or if they're able to trade that, sell that, and earn some money, which will allow them to navigate through the poverty that we are facing in our grassroots communities. We also are involved in youth rehabilitation, anti-gang and anti-drug activism. So in the youth rehabilitation, we identify families that are affected with youth that are addicted to drugs. And we collect those youth, we rehabilitate them using various kinds of methods so that we can get them out of drugs. We can train them spiritually and socially, educate them with regards to the broader issues affecting society, and then send them home when they are finished with drugs, rehabilitate them, and allow them now to be an effective part of their households, as well as an effective part contributing to the development of the community in whichever areas they are. We also do anti-gang activism, where we openly, with community support, oppose the gangsters in the areas, the drug lords in the areas. So what we do is we identify communities, we identify areas where there are gangsters and where there are drug lords. So those people that are selling drugs, we identify their homes and we identify their basis of trade. Then we mobilize communities, and with the mobilization of our communities, we march to their homes. We give them ultimatums, and we ask them to stop dealing drugs and to stop with the gangsterism. And of course, with the support of communities, communities are very passionate about this issue because gangs and drugs destroy communities. Youth are lost to the scourge of gangsterism and drugs. So because people are really, really passionate about it, what often happens is we go to these identified hotspots and we physically remove the drug lord or the gangster. We physically close the doors. And in this way, we close down those drug dens so that we can have less drugs in the communities. With this, a challenge is, of course, the laws of the country. When the South African Police Service does not have the capacity to deal with drug lords and to deal with gangsters, and we, as the people that mobilize communities to go and to shut down those drug dens by force or by any means necessary, what we have is the police service would often arrest us or arrest our people, arrest those that protest with us. And of course, it then becomes a legal battle in which we need to help those people get free from police custody. Ourselves, we were arrested in 2014, and many of our comrades across various years were arrested because of our anti-gang and anti-drug activism within Cape Town and within South Africa. And so I think the quote of Malcolm X is really, really fitting here when he says that the oppressor stabs you with a 5-inch dagger, pulls it out 3 inches, and calls that progress. And so in our society today in South Africa, when we have defeated apartheid, we have a democratic state with a democratic judiciary system, with a police service that is meant to serve South Africans. This, of course, is a step forward in the right direction. But when people on grassroots levels, we take matters into our own hands by confronting the evils and the scourges of gangsterism and drugs, of course, in this end, there is a backlash for us because we face arrest, we face intimidation, and we face legal bullying. And so these are the different kinds of challenges that we face within the sector of anti-gang and anti-crime, anti-drug activism faced today. Moving forward, when we look at grassroots, some organizations preserve and work in the communities, I think that it's important for us to not only identify the scourges within our communities, but there must be an overall goal. And the overall goal of us in this particular program that we run, dealing with poverty, we're trying to alleviate poverty to the best of our abilities, identifying issues of gangsterism and drugs and eradicating it from society. And of course, placing an important part on education through our medium, our resistance media, to educate people about the social conditions of the world. The overall ideal is that we want to oppose all kinds of oppression and injustice in the world today, be it in Palestine, be it the oppression of the the Turkish that they're imposing on the Kurds, be it the American invasion of Iraq, be it capitalism and the imperialist rape in Congo since 1994 up until this day, or the oppression in Western Sahara. The goal is to oppose oppression and imperialism from the world. But the only way we can do that and allow all people from various countries around the world, from various organizations, to stand in solidarity, both locally and internationally, is when we deal with the scourges and with the oppression that is faced by our own societies in our own countries. And it is therefore that we assist and that we attempt to alleviate poverty, to eradicate our communities from the scourge of gangsterism and drugs. And through these methods, we educate, we uplift, and we build a society of both local and international solidarity so that we can all stand in solidarity to eradicate, annihilate, and destroy capitalism, to destroy imperialism from the world, and to see a world that is liberated and free from the shackles of oppression. It is therefore that Said Hassan Nasrallah, he is the leader of a paramilitary and social organization, Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, when he says that the resistance is a public determination, in that when we fight the evils of the world, it can only be done with the support and building of the public, of the people, of communities. This is how we fight, and this is how we liberate ourselves and our societies from oppression. And I would just like to end off with a quote that I had read a few days ago by Comrade Abdullah Öcalan, where he says, "You must believe before everything else that the revolution must come, that there is no other choice." And with all the oppression, with all the scourges that we face around the world and in each locality of each country, we must believe in that revolution, that the revolution is coming, and that all of us collectively, with all our collective struggles, when we move forward to develop communities, to uplift communities, all of these together is a collective path of that change that is leading to that revolution. Thank you. I think I'll end here for today.
Thank you very much, Comrade Zainulabideen, for your presentation to us here this afternoon. Your focus on international solidarity resonates with Comrades Boo as well as Comrades Nonhle. The challenges that you've articulated in the community that you find yourself show how very diverse community structures in the emergence of the post-apartheid context continues in post-apartheid South Africa by communities that have no other choice but to do much more for themselves, and as a catalyst to realize the sacrifices of those that brought about democracy in South Africa. Political freedom, economic and social. After listening to you and our comrades earlier, we still have a long way to go. One of the key issues that is raised by our presenters is the faith in democratic institutions only if it delivers to the people in South Africa. So yes, we are very far from what the constitutional state was envisaged to deliver post-94. And what I want to just say that Comrade Zainulabideen, that quotation you quoted of Leader Abdullah Öcalan was what came to mind, and I was going to quote that too after you concluded. So thank you for preempting that. But I will quote Antonio Gramsci, where he said almost a century ago now, similar to Abdullah Öcalan, from prison, that the new has yet to be born. And here in South Africa, the new was born against apartheid and colonialism. Post-94, the co-opting of the African National Congress and some of its individuals in the tripartite alliance, you and the communities that we come from, Comrade Nonhle, with a sterling work against Shell and all the other industrial corporations, as well as Comrades Boo and the other community organizations that work together across the milieu in South Africa are those new that have been born to take the struggles for our communities so that we can realize a better today for our children and ourselves going forward tomorrow. Yes, it sounds very utopian, but Lira or Abdullah Öcalan very clearly made it known to us in his works that have been translated now into English as well, that capitalism uses and takes the utopias of all these progressive movements and then subverts it. And then we then get our dreams and hopes dashed. Yes, the law is important, but as we can see in South Africa, the law is not as effective. One policeman for 400 citizens in crime-ridden communities or ghettoized structures in the urban neighborhoods in our communities is a stark reflection on the failure of the state. But when it comes to the issue that we've experienced at Marikana, the issues that Comrade Nonhle has raised with us, Comrade Zikode, then suddenly the state unleashes all security agencies against those communities that stand up. And then you are othered, either as vigilantes, as anti-state and anti-progressive. So we've seen all of that brought to the fore here. And at this point, I would like to conclude and open the floor for any discussion or points that need to be raised by anybody who would like to bring that to us. So if there are any, please go ahead.
Yeah, so many points there, but I'll try and ask a question if nobody else has got any questions at the moment. I was quite interested in maybe from Nonhle and Zainulabideen about how the community governance came up is a theme for me quite strongly in both of your presentations. So I'd be interested to know a little bit more about how things are practically organised. How do communities make decisions? Do you have assemblies, or you're not at that stage? And also how I suppose the other side of that is when you're building solidarity, how do you avoid, I think divide and rule is probably something that would come up, is a problem in both contexts as well. So I'd be interested to some more comments about those particular themes if possible. Okay.
Thank you for that question, Comrade Steve. I think Comrade Nonhle now has unfortunately had to leave us because of the load shedding. But I think Comrade Zainulabideen is still with us. And I would ask him to please respond to what Comrade Steve has raised with regards to the mobilization of community structures that he has asked.
Thank you, Comrade Steve, for your pertinent question. I think that in our case, we also work on the democratic model where we have an elected executive, we have our regular community meetings and engagement with our communities, of course, depending on which field of activism we are referring to, and then any major decisions we discuss at executive level with elected representatives. We bring that down to our community level at our AGMs or at our imbizos that are hosted within particular time frames. I think with the if we look at our anti-crime and anti-drug initiatives, we have that every 6 months. And so we have a community meeting with all of our community members. We discuss the particular programs and the agenda that we envision as an executive. And then, of course, we take these suggestions from the floor and, of course, from the expertise of our communities. And then from there, we implement. So I think that we do follow the democratic process of elections, electing our representatives, having our yearly AGMs, our triannual AGMs, etc. So that is the kind of model that we do take. Then, of course, there is also leeway for decisions that are taken only at an executive level, where there isn't particularly time for community engagement and instructions. But of course, that is set up in our constitutions and of course in our triannual meetings where we discuss which powers we have as executive to take on our own, and of course which matters we discuss and we have meaningful engagement with the communities. So for instance, our issue of identifying drug lords, drug hotspots and gang hotspots. This is a unanimous decision. When we identify these areas, the program is that we mobilize the community for a protest. We go to that particular area or to that particular drug hotspot, and we deal with the perpetrators there. So for a matter like that, that is our general program. There isn't much consultation on that. But if we have, for instance, where we identify an organization that we are going to assist within, for example, the vegetables and the fruit that we grow, if someone has a suggestion that there is a shelter for abused women and children, or there is a particular squatter camp where people are living in dire poverty, that will be brought forward. We will discuss the logistics of that with the community, and then at an executive level decide how we will go about implementing those suggestions. So I think in brief, it's a democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for responding, Comrade Zainulabideen. Comrade Steve, any other questions or comments from your end?
Yes.
Please go ahead, Comrade.
Well, first of all, thank you all very much. I'm very impressed and moved and very happy we can make this wonderful connection to South Africa, which I consider one of the most important, let's say, political areas to be focusing on in the whole of Africa. And not only that, for the international struggles for self-determination and the re-examination of what it means in terms of grassroots organizations. As you know, Peace in Kurdistan was set up really as part of a questioning, of precisely what role communities take on the investigation and the following of Öcalan's ideas on grassroots and self-determination. That we really have to go into the central kind of deep roots philosophically, but in every other way, into these issues. That is how our campaign came about, and how this particular event came about. Now, in the course of this, looking at world developments and looking at the political crisis increasing in all parts of the world, I have two questions for now, which is, one, what is your connection between the other country, the other parts of Africa, and have you made any, joint struggles, or are you in communication with these communities? For example, we have very close relations with a community in Kenya, in Nairobi, which came in the last sort of 3-4 years, when we actually sent, or had our comrade Dr. Jeffrey Miley visiting the region and making communities, meeting communities, and working with them on essential projects. Unfortunately, our comrades from there are not in this meeting, but I hope they will eventually see the recording and will distribute it among the Kenyan community. But what is the relation, for example, in other parts of Africa, and not only other parts of Africa, but internationally? Because we are, of course, speaking about struggles from all over the world, from Africa going down to Latin America, and also in the other parts in South Asia, particularly in India, of course, where we had one of our friends who is very active with grassroots communities in India, Felix, who had joined us. And other people like our friend Nikhil Diat, who has done a lot of work in Sudan and in Nigeria. And so maybe you could just comment about these relations that you have in Africa itself, but also internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Comrade Estella, for that question. Comrade Nonhle is back with us, and Comrade Zainulabideen is with us. Comrade Zbu has informed me that his power supply is totally out. He won't be able to rejoin. So I would like to ask Comrade Nonhle to respond first with regards to what is the connection, if any, with your organizations to other parts of Africa or the global community, and how do you connect, and what are those connections about with regard to solidarity? And after your response, we can ask Comrade Zainulabideen to also respond to that. Comrade Nonhle? Oh, I think Comrade Nonhle unfortunately again had to disconnect. Sorry, everyone, connection not great. Comrade Nonhle, if you're struggling with connecting, I'll ask Comrade Zainulabideen to go first. And when you can, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Mahmoud and Comrade Estella, for your question. With regards to our connection to the rest of Africa, I am the coordinator of the Zakzaky Foundation, which is an organization founded as a result of the oppression and the abuse of power by the Nigerian government across subsectors of the Nigerian population, especially Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky, who is the leader of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, an organization with 20 plus million members across religious background. So it's not only an organization for Muslim people, but there are Muslims and Christians and all kinds of people working together. And they really have the same program like the rest of us on Grassroots, where they establish clinics to assist poor people that don't have access to healthcare. They have different programs like they have food banks, they have emergency relief, and they are actually just there to support the poor people of Nigeria. And so with the government, the previous government of Nigeria under the leadership of President Jonathan Goodluck, as well as the current government of Nigeria under the leadership of Muhammad Buhari, had systemically and systematically targeted the Islamic movement of Nigeria, because through their activities in assisting the people on the ground, they inadvertently show the inabilities and the ineffectiveness of the government, who has a program of supporting government officials living in living in richness and in wealth, extreme wealth, while the people on the ground, they live in dire poverty. And so as a result of this program of alleviating poverty, the governments of both Goodluck Jonathan as well as Muhammad Buhari, they have now systematically attacked and targeted Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky and the Islamic movement under his leadership. And so the Zakzaky Foundation had initially began as an organization advocating for the release of Ibrahim Zakzaky, who was illegally detained, incarcerated for many, many years, since 2016 up until very, very early, late last year, before he was released, in the same way that Comrade Abdullah Öcalan is currently facing illegal and an illegitimate incarceration in the Turkish prisons under the directive of the illegitimate president and the officials in Turkey. Not only that, the official or the leadership within the Zakzaky Foundation have had a long history of comradeship with the Polisario Front fighting for the liberation of Western Sahara. So our deputy chair, Shoaib Abuli, has had a very long relationship with the Polisario Front. He had visited the front lines of the battle within Western Sahara, and of course had also arranged post-apartheid for a meeting with the South African government to facilitate the freedom of Western Sahara from Morocco. So our communication, our solidarity, and our integration with various struggles in Africa. It's been there, it's been established. And of course, I think on the very basic front is that we learn from the experiences of struggle in other parts of Africa. We learn from these struggles, and of course, we try to export what we have learned here and try to show them how we do things. We do also have we have ties with various other African countries, including Sierra Leone, where we see that these Israeli companies are coming and they are really raping the minerals. They are mining their various minerals, and they are abusing the local population, where they allow these kids, youngsters from the population, to work in dire conditions, being paid about $1 a day, which is not enough to help them look after their families. They work in poor conditions with no safety equipment, no PPEs, and of course, they get very, very sick working in those mines and in those mining dumps. And so we have been in contact with the people in Sierra Leone on grassroots levels, advocating for an end to this exporting of the minerals and the resource of Sierra Leone to these rich fat cat Israeli companies. And there are some other, we have ties with organizations in Zimbabwe. We have ties with an organization in Mozambique. And so we try, I think, from grassroots to learn from them, to advocate for their struggles, and for them to advocate for our struggles as well. I think that's how we show our solidarity with various different countries within Africa. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Comrade Zainulabideen. Comrade Nonhle, is it possible for you to unmute and respond?
Hi. I'm sorry. I didn't get the question because the signal is very bad where I am.
Okay, the question by Comrade Estella was, is there any connection with other parts of Africa, with other grassroots organizations or movements on the rest of the continent from ACC and yourselves and your formations?
Yes. Yeah. There are connections with the other African communities that are directly affected also, especially by those that are directly by the mining. We're working closely with the Mpumalanga group, and also there are group from the Kenya, there are group from Nigeria. Those are communities that we are, because in order to fight this struggle, you need to draw the lesson from those that they are already been affected. How can you deal with the situation, and what are the challenges that they face? And when we do those exchange communities, it did help us a lot. Also around in South Africa, where we go to KwaZulu-Natal and Richards Bay, where before it did help us a lot to see what these mining companies they promise and what the mining company have done to the land. Because if you are not connected with the others, it's very easy for these a transnational corporation to come and give a false hope to our communities that there will be jobs, but at the end of the day, there will be nothing. That is where Mawaddah Crisis Committee, it's in solidarity with many other African, I can say globally, because we are in solidarity also with the other communities as well, outside even Africa.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Nonhle, for your responses as well. If you still want to continue discussing some of your other solidarity that you have with movements outside of the continent, you can feel free to share with us as well.
Sorry, yeah, my connectivity, I don't know, it's really unreasonable on my side. No, I was just saying that, yeah, that is the thing, that it helps our communities when we fight for the land issue and the human rights matter, that exchange visits are very important, although exchange visits also are part of they think that it helps our communities, but sometimes it's difficult because even if we know that in that community there are things that there's something that we can learn, but what I've just learned is that the space of activism is shrinking. There's few activists where you can just connect, because if we can be assisted with many other activists from Africa, where we can just connect our struggles, I think it can help us a lot, because at this stage you can see that we really, really struggle to connect to each other and to connect our struggles.
Thank you, Comrade Nonhle. There is one more question posed by Dena Arya, and I would like to pose it to our two panelists that are still here with us and speakers. The question is, as members of the international community living elsewhere, so far removed from the day-to-day struggles we have heard about today, what can we do so that our solidarity can be applicable and useful on the ground? This is a connection to you here as leaders of your community organizations by our attendee, Dena Arya. Comrade Nonhle, you can go first and respond to that question on how they may help us with our solidarity to ensure that there can be a difference on the ground here.
The assistance that we can get from internationally, as I'm mentioning earlier, that helps us to shape our way of understanding what is development. If we can be assisted on that, and also to be assisted of the alternatives on what we want to see on the ground. We're really, really struggling, because it's seemingly, even if the communities, they do want to see development, but that's not what the government wants. Now, it put a pressure to the communities if there is no support in terms of alternatives on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Nonhle. Comrade Zainulabideen, from your end.
Thank you very much, comrades and Comrade Zana, for your very pertinent question. Firstly, I would like to agree with Comrade Nonhle on the very pertinent statement that you made, where you said that the space of activism is shrinking. And I think this is a very important statement. I think that perhaps the number of activists and the grassroots organizations out there are not few and many. Of course, there are loads, but I think the spaces in which we network, in which we connect, in which we grow, this is definitely shrinking. And it is forums like this that touches to the point made by Comrade Nonhle, spaces where you bring activists together, and we are able to share experiences, we're able to share our backgrounds, we're able to share our struggles. And I think this assists in this gap of the networking of activism. So thank you very much, Comrade Nonhle, for mentioning that pertinent point. But Comrade Dena, I think that in terms of how people can assist in our local struggles, especially from an international point of view, I think that firstly, it's just really for us to learn from your experiences, to learn from you how you operate, and to learn from your struggles. I think that knowledge is key, and the more we share experiences, the more we share expertise. I think that is one way in which the solidarity can be shown, and one way in which we can be assisted. I think another way also, I think, is always for people in the international sphere to highlight the struggles that we face locally in South Africa. If we look at apartheid, for instance, I just want to use one matter which I think everybody will be well aware of, is the Trojan Horse massacre, in that this very epic matter that has taken place where these youth were fired on with live automatic rifles. It only got the attention it did and highlighted to the international world by foreign journalists from European countries that actually came and were able to capture those moments and ensure that these kind of things were seen by the international world. And so in a modern day South Africa, when we speak about South Africa, we always speak about the positives of the post-apartheid era, about tourism, about our constitution, and we always highlight in the international world, that sphere, about everything that is going well, the good things. And I think that to show solidarity and to assist us would be to also highlight these struggles, the fact that our communities are really eaten up from inside by the scourge of sophisticated gangs and the drug trade, the high poverty, that despite our functioning cities, despite the beauty of our tourism, and despite everything else, we still have in a 2015 census that was printed by Stats South Africa, a government institution, which says that in 2015, 49.2% of all adults were living below the poverty line. So I think that this is the important things that we would like from our supporters and from comrades internationally to show solidarity on, by highlighting these issues that affect our communities. And then I think lastly would just be forums like this again, where you bring comrades together, different activists from different spheres, both within the local spheres of various countries globally, to come together to share experiences and to take home and learn from one another. So I think that is from our end where we could really benefit from the support of comrades internationally, and of course hoping that we can at least reciprocate that to you as well. Thank you, Comrade Dena, for that question, and Comrade Nonhle for your very pertinent comments as well. Thanks.
Can I come in here, please?
Please go ahead, Comrade Estella.
Yeah, I mean, there is, of course, the other in the Western world, like, for example, take Britain, there are now massive struggles emerging of local communities, in particular trade unions and others, which include people from, ordinary railway workers up to nurses and to students, etc. Now, we found in the case of some of the communities, my suggestion would be that, for example, a delegation from you to be invited to talk about your struggle up and down the country would be one possibility, to maybe raise the necessary funds to it and to bring you on the ground in connection with these communities, or, for example, other events, sending people from universities or other students or others interested, trade unions, to South Africa to learn about the struggle by meeting you and meeting the communities. So I think there are different options, and I hope that this video, this recording, will contribute to raise these points for the wider community, because it's not just a question of highlighting on social media and WhatsApps and so on. It will be the question of actual meeting, of really making the experiences. And I would strongly suggest to take this into consideration. And we will certainly make efforts to raise these issues with our friends from all our networks. Our networks on peace in Kurdistan include, after all, lawyers, trade unionists, academics, activists of different types. So I would like to make this, brief suggestion. Thank you.
Comrade Estella, thank you for that important point that you brought to the fore. What is needed is action, and that is key. So action by bringing together those from the South, the global South, in particular South Africa, and those who are in the global North, through the structures of the PIK, the Peace in Kurdistan movement, and its umbrella as the umbrella with all the other expertise that it has access to. And I think a delegation like that can be arranged. It would be fantastic to have comrades Nonhle, comrades Izbu, comrades Zainulabideen, and other progressive organizations as a delegation to come over and meet, possibly in a conference type setting. It would be ideal. The sharing of minds, ideas, and experiences, and bringing that back. I think it would be good to have it not only in the UK or in Europe, it would be even good to have something like that in South Africa, where you come over to us and you experience it firsthand. And I think that is very important. As one of the human rights organizations here that takes the lead for the Kurdish struggle, it is important for us to acknowledge the value of those exchanges that take place. And more importantly, as South Africans, as Comrade Zainulabideen pointed out from the Trojan Horse massacre, it is only through our international solidarity that we learn and understand, but more importantly, act on what we learn and understand, because merely communicating about things is not enough. Interrogating those things and making it real on the ground, that is what we're interested in. And we must thank you for bringing that to this forum, because it gives hope to Comrade Nonhle, Comrade Zainulabideen, and all of us here in South Africa, as well as our partners on the African continent, that yes, we are not alone, and together we can make a difference. Thank you for that, Comrade Estella. I think we are now just over 2 hours and 17 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So, Comrade Estella, if you'd like to share a few points with us so that we can start to wrap up.
Well, the first point is that, in the Kurdish movement, is active all around the globe on the very issues that we raise today. And we will have a very substantial conference which will be organized from the international initiative Freedom for Öcalan, Peace in Kurdistan. And this will happen in the new year. And I hope that our friends, and I will make sure to inform them from the international initiative, will take the project on and will, of course, invite our South African friends to this very important conference in the new year. Number two, I would like to, as I say, emphasize that the struggle on the ground to understand really the issue of education is absolutely vital. I experience it every day in the connection with trade unions and others, that people really do want to know that it is not a question of just activities and protests. It's the question of making the connection on the important thing of analysis, education. Because we face a powerful state here in Britain, but also everywhere else, which are trying to cut us off, to misuse the information, to criminalize movements, including the Kurdish movement at the moment, as you know, is a vital kind of struggle against, Turkey's attempt to present the whole movement as a terrorist movement. And so it continues in various parts of the world. Here in Britain, it is vital that we absolutely hear all the details. So any educational projects that you can recommend, which would include, of course, articles that you write, analysis, all details that we can use to promote this and to organize the right events to invite people for these programs. And one of the things will be, for example, that we do some more interviews, 1 hour interview, maybe with one of the people you choose from the community. If this is one of the speakers today or anybody else, that we can follow up with another big interview that we can spread through our Vimeo section. And this leads me to Marco, who has done, is our media worker, which I think is vitally important to help us spread the news. And it is an important form of alternative communication and involvement, hopefully in the future, with some very good journalists. So I would like to suggest that as a follow-up. And then also, of course, thank all our speakers. And I hope I see you very soon in the UK or in any other part of Europe. So thank you very much to all of you on behalf of Peace in Kurdistan.
Thank you, Comrade Marco.
Anything else? Can I just call on maybe Nick, maybe coming in with a comment or a final comment? He's one of our leading experts and friends. So I'd really appreciate if he came in.
Please go
Hi.
ahead, Comrade Nick.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm certainly not a leading expert. I am I worked, I mean, just to introduce myself, I work with a solidarity and mutual learning group called Corner House. We do I've done a lot of work over the years in solidarity communities affected by large-scale dams, oil pipelines, and the like, and infrastructure corridors. So, but we work more broadly around really the commons and reclaiming the commons and reclaiming the commons. And by commons, I don't just mean common property. I mean the collective right of all, not just a few, to survival, and the need, in order to protect that collective right, to challenge unequal power relations wherever and whenever they occur, in the family, in the community, at the economic level, political level, and so on. So I see that as an everyday struggle, and one that one can't be a spectator on. One has to be actively engaged. Thank you so much for the presentations. I mean, they were really inspirational. I think it would be useful. I mean, I'd certainly like to explore with my Nigerian colleagues. I do a lot of work in Nigeria, principally actually around investigating corruption by Western companies in Nigeria, including Shell, which may be pertinent to the struggle in South Africa to prevent Shell's offshore drilling. And I'm really heartened by the court cases that have been going on there, and I'm all solidarity for the next stage. I understand Shell's appeal. So I will certainly have discussions there, also with colleagues in Sudan, but and I work a lot with Estella and others in Iraq and the Kurdish region. So I really look forward to working more with you all. I think that's probably about it from my part. I think that's about it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nick. So I really look forward to hearing from you, and I promise to keep in touch, about any other news that I hear from other parts of Africa, especially from our Kenyan friends. Okay, and also look forward, to arranging the interview for our website with one of you, in the near future.
Thank you, Comrade Estella, Comrade Nick, Steve, Marco, Peace in Kurdistan. We appreciate the bringing together of us all committed in universal struggles. Most importantly, I would just like to emphasize that it would be important not just to interview one person from South Africa.
Yeah.
I would recommend an interview with all three of those who were present here, and thereafter others or another, because this initial contact is important, because these comrades are already on the ground and their experiences are invaluable with regards to the international solidarities that can be forged going forward. So that's my recommendation. And I think that is key and vital. And we look forward to a conference where we all can meet, especially the comrades that were here. But the issue of the different spaces we find ourselves in and how we operate, and with the increasingly clamping down by authoritarianism in the different governments that we find ourselves under, is a real threat to democracy and the struggles we have, our children, our women, as well as our communities. Simple things like an education have become a struggle. To go to a school for food, that is also a daily struggle. And those things to individuals living in the north may sound insignificant, but those are consequential to the context we are in. And yes, the myth of a rainbow nation remains a myth here in South Africa. We have become much more polarized post 94 than ever. And it is vital that these solidarity groups are given these platforms and opportunities so that the understanding at an international level is prefixed with what is happening on the ground, the real, truthful experiences of our people. And on that note, I'd like to conclude on myself with thanks to everybody who made the time to be here with us this afternoon. Comrade Marco, I know your work starts after we're done, so I wish you well, and anything you need from me, please let me know. I will assist as much as I can. To Comrade Estella, you remain a Dion of wisdom and strength and commitment, and you inspire us to continue as well. Comrades Nick and Steve, thank you very much for being here with us this afternoon. And most importantly, to our speakers, Comrade Zainulabideen, Comrade Nonhle, and also Comrade Dina, who's here, we thank you all for making the time and sharing with us what is very important going forward. So let this beginning be something that we can bear the fruits of our struggles going forward. On that note, thank you very much to everybody, and yours in solidarity. Please take care, comrades, and everything of the best until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you. Solidarity.
Udala bemkwema, wina wonge